My name is Bridgette Sims. I am with RX Outreach, the mail order pharmacy. We're very happy to have you with us today. Our health and wellness classes are brought to you in partnership with some of our very faithful partners and very supportive partners: Anthem, ATB Technologies, Cigna, the Lutheran Foundation of St. Louis, and the Marillac Mission Fund. So just really happy to have everyone here with us on today. And we have a really exciting presentation. We're going to talk about diabetes and everything you want to know or need to know. Donna will help us with. We have Donna Webb with us. She is a registered dietitian. She is a licensed dietitian and also a certified diabetes educator. And she's also the founder of Bright Sky Nutrition. So I'm going to go ahead and let her start. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so she can share her screen, and we'll get started.
Great, thanks, Bridgette. This is about one of my very favorite webinars. I love to meet with you guys. You guys ask great questions. We have great dialogue. So, and usually if you have questions, just put them in the chat and Bridgette will stop me. And I'm okay to be interrupted and answer questions before we move on. Because I love this stuff. I love this topic. I'm passionate about it because food fixes it. There's so much great news. There's so much good news in the message that we're going to talk about today. So you don't get discouraged if you're like, oh my goodness, the numbers are so crazy. There's so many great things that you have control over to control your diabetes if you have it now, or make yourself healthier so you can have a future of wellness instead of a future of sickness. And that's our goal for everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Like I said, you guys just jump in if you have any questions or confusion about anything that I'm doing. It's telling me, Bridgette, host disabled participant screen sharing. So
okay,
I think
now you can do it. You
okay.
can do it now.
All right, perfect. We're getting so good at this, Bridgette.
Yes, we are.
We're improving every time. So, very good. All right, guys, I'm going to go. Here we go. Okay. So really, I wasn't sure what everyone should know about diabetes. So I'm just going to kind of share things that I think people should know that I think are very interesting about diabetes and the rates of diabetes and what happens in our bodies with diabetes. And again, how much control and how much really we do have to get our blood sugars under really good control. So this is my opinion about what everyone should know about diabetes. And then you guys, I don't know if you got the handouts. I sent a PDF file of this presentation to Bridgette, and you sent it out, Bridgette. I appreciate that.
I'll get it out to them after the presentation, Donna.
Okay, great. So don't bother taking tons of notes. You're going to get this presentation in a PDF file after it's over. But anyway, so I thought this was interesting. We know that with the rates of people being more overweight in this country, we know that that's connected to diabetes. And so we do see the rates of diabetes climbing up. And right now, this is about 2-year-old data, so it might be a little bit higher now, but 13.2% of Missourians have diabetes, and 1 in 4 of those people don't know that they have diabetes. So I think people are just diabetes kind of creeps up on us. It actually develops over 15 to 25 years over kind of a lifetime. And so I think people don't notice that they're feeling not as well. They don't have as much energy. And they kind of think maybe it's just how they feel as they age. So it's not always a bell that's rung that sends people to the doctor to find out that they have diabetes. They almost find out a lot of times, maybe through an annual physical. I had a patient last week, actually I had a patient yesterday in my office who she had a stroke. She's a 55-year-old woman. She had a stroke last week, and she found out from that when they put her in the hospital. her blood sugar was over 500, and she did not know that she had diabetes. She just thought this was how she felt at age 55 and didn't know she could feel any different. So just know that it's very common. And we now know that 35.9% of Missourians have pre-diabetes. That means if you put those numbers together, that means about half of the people that live in Missouri have either diabetes or pre-diabetes. They have some sort of insulin resistance, some sort of blood sugar issues going on. So it's not a few people, or we don't know those people. It's kind of everybody. It's kind of everybody knows somebody that either has it or has somebody in their family or a neighbor or a coworker, or you might have it yourself. So it's very prevalent overall in this country, and it's about 50% across the country. We might be a little bit ahead, but it's just about half the country that has either diabetes or pre-diabetes. So we want to talk about what is diabetes, what's going on in the body, how is the body supposed to work, and then what goes wrong when somebody has diabetes. And so hopefully, yep, my mouse will show up here. So if you guys see, then I need to get this all. Okay. So this is a graph. We're going to talk about how blood sugar is supposed to work. And so if you eat foods with carbohydrates in them, and we'll talk a little bit about what those foods are, but really we're not going to spend a lot of time on the diet, but we'll spend a little time on the diet. But any foods that have carbohydrates. So those are pasta, rice, starchy vegetables, fruit, and of course, sweets and desserts and cookies and candies and things like that. Those all have carbohydrates in them. When we eat those foods, the body breaks those down into the smallest part, which is glucose. Glucose is just another word for sugar, and it is the form of sugar that goes through our blood that our body can use for energy. So when we call blood sugar, it's the same thing as glucose, okay? So this kind of represents the blood sugar. And when we eat something with carbohydrates in it, our brain sends a signal to our pancreas. Our pancreas then makes a hormone called insulin. Insulin is a hormone, like I said, and it actually works on the cells. It attaches to the cells, opens up the cell, so the glucose can get into the cell to be used for fuel. So if you kind of look over here, this is the cell. So the insulin would then attach to this cell, open up the cell, so the glucose can get into the cell to be used for fuel. That's normal blood sugar. That's what's supposed to happen. When we have type 2 diabetes, or when we have diabetes, what's happening is that we're either not making enough insulin or we're not making any insulin at all. So when that happens, the glucose can't get into the cells to be used for fuel. So a couple different things happen then. The glucose then stays in the bloodstream. So we notice that we have higher sugar in our bloodstream. And when it gets to a certain point, then the kidneys are going to kind of start to flush out any extra sugar. So the body's trying to figure out what to do with this extra sugar when the insulin isn't working properly. So there's 3 types of diabetes. We're going to talk about these: type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and gestational diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is when the body isn't making any insulin at all. This typically happens to people at younger ages. So when you hear about kids or teenagers having diabetes, it's usually type 1. But really, anybody can get type 1 diabetes. It's kind of actually being found to be diagnosed more commonly in adults now. Not as common as type 2, but it is more common than it used to be. Type 1 diabetes is considered an autoimmune disease where the body is attacking itself. And unfortunately, just because of our diet and lifestyle in our culture, we're having more autoimmune diseases in general. So we do see a few more people than we used to developing type 1 diabetes as adults. It does require a lifetime of insulin injections. So they have to give themselves insulin every day in order to control their blood sugar. With type 2 diabetes, there's 2 things are happening. First of all, your body's not making as much insulin as it used to. So some of the functionality of the pancreas has decreased, and we no longer make the full amount, the max amount of insulin. And the other thing that happens with type 2 diabetes is our body becomes insensitive to our insulin. The body and the insulin, or our cells and the insulin, are not talking to each other. So that requires kind of an extra load on the pancreas to put out more insulin. And we're thinking now that that insulin resistance part happens years before someone actually develops type 2 diabetes or is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So because, again, of diet and lifestyle, we can become insulin resistant even back into our 20s and 30s. And that lifetime of insulin resistance and that extra strain on the pancreas is what kind of wears out the pancreas, where the function kind of goes down. And that's when it flips over as a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. The good news is that it can be managed with lifestyle and doesn't require, not for everyone, it doesn't require insulin injections. Insulin can be one form of treatment for type 2 diabetes, but there's lots of pills or oral medications that somebody with type 2 diabetes can take that can help them manage their type 2 diabetes. And then I just want to mention the gestational diabetes. You don't have to worry about that for most of us. That's the type of diabetes you get when you're pregnant. So for some pregnant women, they do develop gestational diabetes. And the way that I think of it is when a woman has a baby inside, when they're growing a baby, it's kind of like such a load on their metabolism that sometimes their bodies kind of can't handle it. It's too much. So they're not quite making enough insulin, they're insulin resistant. So that's usually resolved after that the woman gives birth. But they're always at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. And that's because we kind of already know that their body can only handle so much load on their metabolism, and then they can't really handle it. The one worry, I think, with gestational diabetes is what the impact is on the baby. And so for some, insulin is a growth hormone. It's a storage hormone. So that's why you might see the babies being extra large if a woman has gestational diabetes while they're pregnant. There's also some concern about the lungs not being fully developed. And an immediate concern right after the baby is born is that the baby now has to rely on its own insulin, and it may have some low blood sugar. So actually some hypoglycemia is a little bit of a concern right when the baby's born. If they can kind of get that baby to the baby's pancreas to kind of work on its own, then it's fine. It's not typically a long-term problem, but just right when the baby's born, there's some concern about some low blood sugar. So those are the types of diabetes we're going to talk about today. There's some other ones, but these are the most common, and that's what we're going to kind of focus our talk on today. So I want you to know about the symptoms of diabetes. These are kind of symptoms that can be tagged with lots of other health issues, but when you start to see a cluster of these together, it might be time for you to talk to your doctor about maybe getting your blood sugar checked, and we'll talk about how we check blood sugar here in a few minutes. But some of the symptoms of diabetes, remember I mentioned that if your blood sugar starts to get too high, your kidney will start to flush out and it kind of spills over into your urine. That creates the need for more fluid or water to be drawn into your kidneys so your kidneys can flush out that extra sugar. And so if you find that you're going to the bathroom a lot more often, if you're urinating more often than usual, not related to maybe your medications or something, if you're feeling very thirsty, that can be a symptom of diabetes. Kind of thinking about that, if your body's flushing out more water, you're actually becoming a little bit dehydrated. And so feeling more thirsty can be a symptom of diabetes. Also, even though you're eating and your appetite hasn't changed, you might notice that you're feeling more hungry, and even having some, I'll jump down, even having some weight loss. that's unintended and unexpected, like for no reason you notice that you're starting to maybe lose some weight, that can be a symbol or a sign of or symptom of diabetes. Also noticing extreme fatigue, which I think is like tagged onto everything we're feeling these days. It can be a symptom of diabetes. Blurred vision. For me, a lot of the patients that I see, that's a really common symptom. That all of a sudden their vision's blurry, they go to their eye doctor and now notice that they need to get their blood sugar checked. That's actually cleared up then pretty quickly when they get their blood sugar under control. So this isn't the long-term eye problems that somebody might have with blindness with type 2 diabetes or with diabetes. It's more of an acute, fixable kind of blurriness in the eyes. If you're having cuts or bruises that are slow to heal, that can be a sign or a symptom of diabetes. And if you're having some tingling or numbness in your toes or your fingers, that can also be a symptom of diabetes. So just kind of some things to pay attention to that might be a symptom of diabetes. Just getting your blood sugar checked or calling your doctor about that.
I want to just mention, does anyone have any questions at this point? I just wanted to stop for a second and see if anyone had any questions.
Yes, we do here.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, what is
What is pre-diabetes?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on to that question. We're going to answer that in the next slide. That's a great question.
Okay. Did you have another one?
Yes,
Oh, okay, that was two of the same question. Okay.
Oh, good.
That's
Oh,
it.
good. Okay, let's get on. I think that's the next slide. Yep, here we go. Okay, so there's two ways that we measure glucose. Okay, one is where they test it to see if you have diabetes. Okay, so one is fasting plasma glucose, or checking your blood sugar when you're fasting, and that's just pricking your finger. Usually you can do it at your doctor's office, and that will tell us what your blood sugar is at that moment. And so the levels for diagnosis for diabetes is if it's 126 or above, that's considered diabetes. But before that, if your blood sugar is starting to climb up, if your blood sugar is over 100, so between 100 and 125, that's actually considered pre-diabetes. And when pre-diabetes is happening, that's a sign that you're having that insulin resistance we talked about. So that's when the insulin and your cells are not talking to each other. When that happens, it requires your pancreas to make more and more and more insulin until finally they do communicate and you have a crash or you have a drop in blood sugar. So many people that have had pre-diabetes, they've had what we would call low blood sugar, hypoglycemia for years, but really hypoglycemia is not low blood sugar, it's actually insulin resistance. And so that's kind of the misunderstanding. And so it's low blood sugar, but it's actually hyperinsulin. So we're making too much insulin because we have to overcome that insulin resistance. And that's what pre-diabetes is. Does that answer your questions about pre-diabetes?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so and that's why I was saying, you know, you could have this development of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, can be over years of pre-diabetes. And for folks that are working these days, a lot of companies now have wellness programs where they actually are checking people's blood sugar as part of their wellness program. So now these days, people that are in their 20s or 30s, they're getting their blood sugar checked years before they might have gotten it checked if, when they actually have diabetes. So they'll know now if they have pre-diabetes and can make changes before they're in their 50s and 60s when it's in full-blown diabetes. So I'm really thrilled to work with companies that do that. And so I can sound the alarm now before they're walking down that road for years and years, and then all of a sudden they're on medication. So we're trying to avoid that. The other type of test.
And Donna, before you start in that, Donna, can we ask a question?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, if you're pre-diabetic, what are something you're not supposed to eat?
if you're pre-diabetic, what is something you're not supposed to eat?
That we're going to talk about that also. Yes, we're going to get
Okay.
to we're going to talk a little bit about what affects blood sugar, and I'm going to give you quick and easy tips on what you can do with your diet. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That just tells us we're all tracking in the same direction. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Okay, so the other test that you can get at your doctor's office is called the A1C. We used to call it the hemoglobin A1C. And so that one is giving us indication of what your average blood sugar has been over the last 3 months. And how that works is with the hemoglobin A1C test, we know that glucose sticks to all of the cells in our body. So the more glucose you have in your blood, the more uncontrolled your blood sugar is, the more glucose is sticking to all the cells in your body. So when they do the hemoglobin A1C test, they're not looking at how much sugar is in your blood, they're looking at how much sugar stuck to your red blood cells, okay? And red blood cells live for 3 months. So that's how when they do that test where they can see how much glucose stuck to your red blood cells, they can tell what your average blood sugar has been over the last 3 months. So I feel like both of these types of tests give us really valuable information. I love looking at both of those, so they're wonderful tests. So for the A1C, they diagnose diabetes at 6.5 or higher. The lady that I was telling you guys about that didn't know she had diabetes until she had a stroke, her A1C was 13. So it was way higher than that 6.5. And with the pre-diabetes, we can already know, again, if the blood sugar is starting to climb up, pre-diabetes is 5.7 up to 6.4. So between 5.7 and 6.4 is considered pre-diabetes. A normal, you can have an A1C of even in the 4s. I had never seen it lower than that, but definitely we can have healthy blood sugar at lower numbers than that. Questions about that? All right. Okay, very good, very good. Okay.
Oh, we do.
Yes.
How often is it recommended to get that blood test?
Well, the A1C, again, you wouldn't want to get it checked more than every 3 months. So if you got it checked and you had a blood sugar that was in, I believe if it's 7 or higher, that's considered uncontrolled diabetes. And if you have a 7 or higher, your doctor will probably want you to get it checked every 3 months. If it's under 7, that's considered controlled diabetes. And then that way, your doctor, I believe, gets it checked every 6 months.
Every 6 months. There you go. Okay.
But if you're in the pre-diabetes range or you're lower, yeah, if you're lower than that, then it's, I think, just with your annual physical. But I want to tell you, if your doctor's not checking that, ask them to check that. My doctor, when I get my annual physical, she doesn't routinely check that. So I always ask her, of course, I'm very curious since this is the business that I do. I always ask her to make sure that she adds that A1C on there.
Does that answer? Yep. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, I do want to talk a little bit about checking your blood sugar for those of you that do have diabetes and might be checking your blood sugar at home. So there's lots of reasons to do this. I do encourage people that if you're concerned about your blood sugar, that you can get a really inexpensive meter at Walmart or Walgreens. It's the Rely On meter. The reason I recommend that is because the strips are very expensive if you're getting a branded meter. So if you get a name brand meter, the strips can be up to 50 cents or $1 a piece, for a strip. So you're very, very picky and discerning about when you actually check your blood sugar. But if you get a cheaper meter, you can use the cheaper strips. So the Walmart strips are about 50 strips for about $9. So that makes them, I don't know, 20 cents a piece or something, whatever that ends up being. Anyway, we'll have to do the math, but it's much less expensive way to do that. And then if you're going to check your blood sugar at home, you want to use that information to help you know if your treatment plan is working. We're going to talk about what affects blood sugar here in a second. But for example, if you check your fasting blood sugar, it will tell you a little bit about how your diet's doing. Are you eating too much carbohydrate? It tells you if your medications are working. It gives you some information about what needs to be adjusted in your lifestyle to make sure that you're having good blood sugar control. But if you're just going to check your blood sugar, write down the number and stick it in a drawer and never use that information, I think it's kind of pointless. So that's just my 2 cents. But if you are going to use it, it is great information. So many people check fasting blood sugar in the morning. And if you're going to check in the morning, the fasting number should be, actually this is wrong on my slide. You want to change this. It should be 80 to 130. They actually bumped that up a little bit just to get people away from having low blood sugar. So fasting blood sugar should be 80 to 130. And that's fasting in the morning before you've eaten anything. And then if you want to know how your meals are affecting your blood sugar, you can check your blood sugar 2 hours after the start of a meal. So if you start eating lunch at 12 o'clock, but you're not really done until 12:30, you still check 2 hours after the start of your meal. So you would check your blood sugar at 2 o'clock, and that tells you how that meal affects your blood sugar. And that's valuable information, I think. That tells you if you're getting too much carbohydrate or do you need to eat a little more protein. It actually gives you some great information about how you can modify your meals to keep your blood sugar in good range. And then I do want to mention low blood sugar. Just to have a little quick slide in here about that. So if you are on medication that is causing you to make more insulin or is giving you some insulin, because some of the oral medications are a kick in the pants to your pancreas, if you want to think of it that, or squeezing your pancreas a little bit more, stimulating your pancreas to make more insulin. If you're on that kind of medication or you're actually taking insulin, it's good to know about low blood sugar. So low blood sugar can happen. Let me give you the symptoms of low blood sugar. You all of a sudden will feel kind of headachy, lightheaded, maybe sweaty, kind of irritable, maybe feeling a little panicky, like I need to eat something really quickly. If that happens, you need to stop what you're doing and check your blood sugar at that moment, okay? You need to check your blood sugar. If it is under 70, then you need to treat it, okay? So we treat it with fast-acting sugar. So a fast-acting sugar, the fastest acting sugar is in liquid. So it should be a half of a cup of orange juice or a half of a can of regular soda. Those are the fastest acting sugars. So you check your blood sugar, you treat it with one of our fast acting sugars, and then you do nothing for 15 minutes. So if you're walking through Walmart and this happens, you need to find a bench and you need to just sit down for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, you should check your blood sugar again and make sure that it's up into that normal range. If it's not, you want to treat it again. And then again, same thing, sit there for 15 minutes, check it again. If after 2 treatments, it's not back up into the normal range, then it's time to call your doctor or call emergency or, dial 911 or something at that point. Just because then you probably need to get into the doctor pretty quickly. We also have on here glucose tabs. That's also, you can get that at the pharmacist, at your pharmacy. It's going to be in the diabetes section. There's all kinds of brands of glucose tabs. That's a great thing to carry in your purse or your glove compartment or something. And it's like 4 to 5 glucose tabs that you can take, and that's going to do the same thing. So I just wanted to mention low blood sugar while we're talking about checking blood sugar. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what affects your blood sugar. So basically, if you're checking your blood sugar at home, there's 4 things that you want to think about that can be affecting your blood sugar. So the 2 things that make your blood sugar go up are stress and food, Okay, so if your blood sugar is a little bit elevated and you've been eating great, you might think about what your stress level has been recently. And when I say stress, it can be physical or emotional stress. So when I say physical stress, if you're having a stress on the body, like you have a cold, or you're feeling you're in pain, maybe you've had a recent surgery or anything like that, those can actually increase your blood sugar. So know that. And of course, food and the foods that you choose can increase your blood sugar. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second. And then the two things that can lower your blood sugar are activity, so doing some exercise, and then your medication can lower your blood sugar. So those are the two things that lower your blood sugar. And then just hanging out on activity for a second, when we exercise, it actually acts just like insulin. It makes our bodies more sensitive to our insulin, and it causes our cells to open up so that glucose can get into the cells. So it actually pulls the glucose from the bloodstream into your muscles for that activity. And let me mention one more thing while we're on activity. The place that your insulin wants to put glucose into the most is muscles. Okay? So muscle is kind of where our metabolism lives. So if we don't have very much muscle mass, the insulin doesn't have anywhere to put that glucose. So what happens is you're always converting it to fat, and the fat then has to be stored. So then we're storing fat, glucose turned into fat, into obviously our fat stores, but the ones we get most concerned about is the fat stores around our vital organs, like in our belly area, okay? So you want to do things that are gonna improve and build muscle mass. And so that, of course, is activity. You might maybe do just kind of lifting with maybe even cans of vegetables or something. It doesn't have to be really, really strenuous, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. The other way to actually stimulate making more muscles is eating protein. Just the act of eating that protein, just getting that protein in your body stimulates more muscles. So focusing on cardio, walking, that kind of exercise, and definitely doing something that's going to build muscle is going to be really important for helping to manage your blood sugar. And then talking about managing your medicines, we've already talked about what to do with low blood sugar, but knowing about the diabetes medications that you're taking and knowing how they work on your body. Are they going to be a medication that stimulates more insulin, where you have to kind of be tuned in a little bit more and more careful and watchful for that low blood sugar kind of thing to happen? So just something to kind of think about with those. Tell me what questions you guys have on before we move into food. Everybody's good? Okay, all right, we're gonna move into food now. Okay, so it's my opinion that we don't need to make food complicated, okay? It's really, really simple. There's basically, I'm gonna tell you what not to eat, and we're gonna talk about what to eat and then how much to eat. But we wanna start with what not to eat. The reason I'm so, I guess I wanna start here is because I believe that most of our blood sugar issues, remember it starts with that insulin resistance, is started by something in the body called chronic inflammation, okay? So it's really simple, but what I'm talking about there is, think about if you get a cut on your finger, your immune system kicks in, all that immune system chemicals rush to your cut on your finger heals up, and then your immune system goes quiet again. With chronic inflammation, our immune system doesn't go quiet. There's no turn off valve, so we constantly have these immune system chemicals rushing through our body. That chronic inflammation is what causes just about all of the chronic diseases that we're dealing with. and it definitely contributes to this insulin resistance. So if we can decrease inflammation in our body, that just already makes our insulin work better. Okay, so we want to start there. So we want to remove anything in our diet that could be contributing to that inflammation. And so we want to become ingredients warriors, all right? I want you to be, when you're at the grocery store or you're doing your grocery pickup list or whatever, reading, don't let anything get in your grocery basket that you haven't read the ingredients, okay? Nothing makes it in your basket that you don't know what the ingredients are. And these are your 3 simple rules. You want to avoid any foods that have added sugar. Sugar is the most inflammatory ingredient in our diet, okay? Our bodies can handle a little bit of sugar. We cannot handle all the sugar that's added in the standard American diet, okay? And the thing about it is that sugar on an ingredients label is written as so many different things. So when you see high fructose corn syrup or fruit juice concentrate or agave or honey or maltose or dextrose or corn syrup or corn syrup solids, all of those mean sugar, okay? There's not one that's better than the other. I'll tell you just a little bit more about sugar and why I get so concerned about it. The sugar, and I'm not talking about carbs, I'm talking about actual sweet sugar. Part of that actual sweet sugar is called fructose. So there's really 2 molecules. There's glucose and fructose in that sugar molecule. We already know about glucose. Glucose is blood sugar. It's the fructose part that is actually really dangerous for our liver. Where glucose can be used by all the cells in our body, fructose can only be used by the liver, and the liver can only handle a little bit. So the liver can handle the amount of fructose, let's say in an orange. It cannot handle a large Coke from McDonald's, right? We think about, oh, where are we getting this much sugar? We're getting this much sugar. Think about those supersize and the giant big gulp and all those things. When you fill that with sugar water, also known as Coke, our liver just cannot handle that. And so what happens is the fructose is turned into fat, which is triglycerides. And then where do we store it? We store it right around that liver in our middle, and that is the most dangerous place for us to store that. So I'll get off that sugar soapbox now, but that's why I get so concerned when sugar is hidden in 80% of the foods at the grocery store. So that's my number 1. Avoid foods with added sugar, avoid foods with more than 5 ingredients, and avoid foods with ingredients that you can't pronounce and you don't know what they look like. Oh, I said can. It should be can't pronounce and you don't know what they look like, okay? So those are your rules when it comes to ingredients. And I'm going to share the next slide with you. I don't know if we've gone over this in the past. I apologize if this was a repeat for you guys, but I think it's worth repeating. We want to compare now regular chips to the baked chips, okay? And I ignore this nutrition facts label because the food industry can make that look higher or lower in something that that they're trying to sell. So we want to ignore the nutrition facts label. We're going to go straight down here to the ingredients label. So if we look at the ingredients on regular chips, we have potatoes, vegetable oil, sunflower corn, and or canola oil, and salt. I basically have 3 ingredients. There's no added sugar, and I know what all 3 of those ingredients looks like. Then if I hop over here to the baked chips, we've got, whoops, sorry about that. Whoops. There we go. Sorry about that. If we go over to the baked chips, we have dried potatoes, cornstarch, sugar, corn oil, salt, soy lecithin, and corn sugar. So we've got 7 ingredients. I have 2 kinds of sugar, and I have an ingredient I have no idea what it looks like. So when we're talking about what kinds of foods are creating that inflammation, leading to the insulin resistance, leading to type 2 diabetes, it's because of this kind of ingredients label. And everybody always thinks that the baked or these diet products are really healthy. They're absolutely not. And we know because we can look at the ingredients. The other thing I want to point out here is that we know that potatoes are a good source of vitamin C. So if you want to know how much vitamin C is left into potato chips, we can go down here to the daily values, and we see that regular chips have 10% of our daily value of vitamin C. So there's a little bit, there's not much, but there's a little bit. If we hop over to the baked chips, we drop down to 4% vitamin C. So in these very processed sort of diet foods, we see that the more junk is added and the less nutrition is in it. Now, before you leave here thinking I'm telling people to eat potato chips, this is the most unprocessed potato, and this has 45% of our daily value of vitamin C. So you can see we want to get food to as close to nature as we can. We want to get max nutrition in every morsel, every bite that we take. Any questions about that so far?
Yeah, I do have a question, Donna. We talked about sugar. What are your thoughts about sugar substitutes like stevia?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really honest here. So I would still want you to do sugar substitute over sugar, okay? There is mountains of research that shows how bad sugar is for our health. I mean, really, if we got down to it, it probably should be, FDA regulated and limited, honestly. What we know about how bad fructose and sugar is to us, there's mountains of research. And if we look at the research about the artificial sweeteners, it's always kind of controversial, and I think it's probably dose dependent. And if we just looked at dose dependent, if we looked at how much sugar we have in the diets compared to how much maybe an artificial, maybe you're putting some equal in your iced tea or something, there's just no comparison. So I think that maybe that's why we don't see so much bad stuff with the artificial sweeteners. Now, I go back to, we don't want to be putting any chemicals in our food. So I would just consider that minimizing just the chemicals. The sweetener I do use and I do approve of is stevia. Stevia does come from a stevia plant, and usually it's an extracted process. So it's not overly processed, but it's extracted. The thing you have to be careful with stevia is always blended with something. So if you get, again, read the ingredients. So you know what that stevia is being blended with. If you're using Truvia, the little green packets, that's pretty popular now. Stevia is blended with erythritol. And erythritol is a sugar alcohol. And sugar alcohols are considered pretty natural overall, but they are used as laxatives. So if you get too much, you're going to start to have, cramping, bloating, probably some loose stools. So you that's dose dependent too. So you have to be careful with how much sugar alcohol you have and figure out which ones maybe you're intolerant to or mess up your stomach. You'll find a lot of people maybe that have diabetes, they get a box of sugar-free candy or Russell Stouffer sugar-free caramels or something, and oh, this is great, it's sugar-free, I can eat all I want, and that'll end up putting them maybe in the bathroom with a lot of cramping and bloating and discomfort. So you have to kind of be careful with that. There's another stevia product that's stevia in the raw that you would think was a great product, but if you look at that ingredient, it is mixed with dextrose, and dextrose is sugar. So then you have to kind of really be careful of that. So it really all goes back to ingredients, ingredients, ingredients. Tell me what other questions you have about that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, I use Splendor, so,
Splenda?
Yeah, what about Splenda?
You know, Splenda is my second choice. If they don't have stevia, Splenda is my second choice. Splenda is a derivative of sugar, so they've made it from sugar. So I feel like that's maybe a little more natural, but it's 600 times sweeter than sugar. That's why you just have to use a little bit. So if I was going to choose, I would choose stevia first, Splenda next. So those are probably the only ones that I would use.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
okay, if you're pre-diabetic, are you not supposed to have caffeine?
No, caffeine's fine. There's no, really the research really is not against caffeine at all. And I've not really read anything related to caffeine and blood sugar. Have you seen something?
Have you seen something?
No, but I was told when I
No,
went to the hospital that
She was told at the hospital to
that I'm
stay
not
away
supposed to
from
have any
caffeine
and I'm pre-diabetic.
because she's pre-diabetic.
No, that's great. No, there's many other things you need to do before you have to worry about your caffeine.
I gave up my coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a different reason for the low caffeine.
Yeah.
No, they said I was in the hospital. They said that I was diabetic and I could only have 2 fruits and no caffeine.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I ain't never heard that.
Hmm.
That's what I was told. That's why I'm like,
Well,
what's going on? You know.
yeah, no, that's, so this, what I would really encourage you to do what we're talking about today, and you will be great, okay? So removing those processed foods, again, look at how much sugar you would remove, you know, if we start reading those ingredients labels. And then we're gonna hop over to the right side of this. This is how you put your plate together at lunch and dinner. I don't really, I mean, if you wanna do vegetables at breakfast, I think that's great. But I wanna walk through this little plate. And if you start to do this, you are going to have manage your carbs. You're going to have all the nutrition that you need. And I think, again, if you've heard me talk before, you've heard my message. We've got to start focusing on how much nutrition we need, not just how much we need to deprive ourselves of. Okay. So when I talk to my patients, this list on the left, what not to eat, that's my only rule about what not to eat. Okay. That's it. I just don't want you to eat processed food. Then when you're putting your foods together, if you can keep this plate in mind, keep this pie chart in your mind, your portions are going to naturally be perfect, okay? So I'm going to start with the low carb vegetables. Well, let me start with the high carb vegetables, and then so we know which ones are the low carb. The high carb vegetables are corn, beans, peas, potatoes, winter squash. There's only 5. Corn, beans, peas, potatoes, winter squash. Those are your starchy vegetables. Those are the ones you want to control the portion.
Not a vegetable.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Those are the ones you want to control your portion size. And the only thing I want you to do is keep them small enough to fit on 1/4 of your plate. And your plate diameter should be a 9 to 10 inch plate. So when you're doing a potato, you just want to make it about the size of your fist or cut it in half. And I don't care if they're white potatoes or sweet potatoes. I already showed you that white potatoes, you know, are still high in vitamin C, and sweet potatoes are high in vitamin A. So they both have great nutrition. So whatever, either one, you want to just make sure that it fits on 1/4 of your plate. So if those are the starchy vegetables, all the other vegetables are non-starchy, and all the other vegetables are all you can eat. And I want you to eat as much as you can, okay? Now, the reason for that is they are low carb and high fiber. They are high in vitamins and minerals that we're probably not getting enough of. And they are high in something called phytochemicals, which means plant chemicals, which is the chemicals that give the vegetable its color. So that's why getting that rainbow of vegetables and the deeper, darker colors you can get, that is absolutely required by our bodies. We actually make an anti-inflammatory enzyme naturally, but we can't make it if we don't have stinky vegetables in our diet. The stinky ones like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and kale and all of those vegetables like that. There is a specific phytochemical in them that is required by our bodies to make anti-inflammatory enzymes in our body. And we've never thought of those as actual nutrients. We just thought of those, they're probably good for me. I just don't need to get them all the time. We need to get as much of that as we can.
And Donna, we have another question.
Sure.
What's the difference in the winter and summer squash?
Yeah, the winter squashes are going to be like pumpkin, acorn, butternut. Those are all going to be winter squashes. Your summer squashes are going to be like zucchini and the yellow summer squash, and spaghetti squash is a summer squash. That's a great question.
Why is one high carb and the other is not?
Well, just the makeup of them. I mean, just, you know, they're just different plants, different vegetables. So they're just, they just don't have I mean, if you think about those winter ones, they're denser, like a potato or sweet potato.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to say too, I want to mention too that I really like spaghetti squash to make spaghetti with. Yeah. Donna did a really good presentation to show you how you can cook it in the microwave. So that really helped me. So I really like to use spaghetti squash as a low carb substitute for pasta when I'm making spaghetti or doing something like that. It tastes really good. So
that's awesome. And it's dual purpose, isn't it? It's replacing your pasta, which is carby, and then adding nutrition. Anytime we can slip things in there, adding nutrition, that's absolutely what we want to do. Thanks, Bridget. That sounds great. All right, so loading up on those low carb vegetables, half a plate at lunch, half a plate at dinner, okay? So you think you're getting a little bit, half a plate at lunch, half a plate at dinner. I don't care if they're fresh or frozen. I don't care if they're cooked or raw. I don't even care if they're canned, as long as they follow our ingredients rules, okay? So have a backup plan. The easiest way to do vegetables is get the steamables. Steamables, frozen vegetables, then no matter what other vegetables you have, you've always got that as a backup plan. They take 6 to 8 minutes to cook. You get them done quickly. And then I want you to add natural fat somewhere on your plate. So adding butter all over that broccoli, a little salt and pepper. It's easy to eat half a plate when you eat it like that. It is delicious. And so as much of that as you can load up on, the better. We'll talk a little bit more about fat here in a second, but then I want to move over to protein. I cannot say, I've already mentioned how important protein is for our muscle mass, to maintain our muscles, but it's also important in just 1,000 different ways in our bodies, including managing our hunger. So we have hormones that tell us when to stop eating and when to start eating. Protein increases our hormones that tell us to stop eating. And I cannot tell you, I would say almost zero patients that I see when they first come into me are getting enough protein at breakfast. Almost zero. Almost every single person, we have to talk about increasing their protein at breakfast. When they come back to see me in a week, the first thing they say is, I can't believe how much energy I have. So we've got to be giving our bodies enough of all nutrients, but even protein, we're not getting enough protein. So thinking adding eggs, and I want you to get at least 20 grams of protein per meal. And 1 ounce of protein food has about 7 grams. So that means bumping your protein up to at least 3 ounces of protein, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Another nice way to add protein to your meals is a new milk that's come out probably a few years ago, but it's called Fairlife milk. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It is filtered differently where it's a little lower in sugar and a little higher in protein. There's actually 13 grams of protein in a cup. That's pretty good for a cup of milk. So basically that's getting you more than halfway there with your protein. So if you just did that, so I feel like that Fairlife milk is kind of insurance for any meal to make sure you're getting your protein if you're maybe not quite getting there with your meat portion. Questions about protein? Let me also mention with protein.
I'm sorry, what's a good protein supplement if you are not eating meat?
Or don't drink milk.
Or don't drink milk?
It's hard. I'm going to be honest with you. It's tough because although vegetables, some vegetables and beans, peanut butter, things like that do have protein, they don't have nearly as much as meat does. And protein and those vegetable kinds of sources always have a lot of carbs that come with them. So I'm going to be honest, it is difficult. But you could probably do it. You could also do it with some supplements, maybe some pea protein supplement, something like that. Some soy protein supplement if you don't have an intolerance to soy. And you can put it in those artificial milks, the almond milk or the soy milk. Almond milk by itself is only one step up from water. By themselves, they really don't help much with your protein. So you kind of have to look for those milks, and then I would probably go ahead and bump it up even a little more with the pea protein. Yeah, I don't know if you're not doing it. So if you're not doing milk, maybe if you're doing other dairy products like eggs, cheese, or yogurt, that's also the Greek yogurt is a great source of protein. I don't know. Tell me about that. Are you doing any dairy at all?
Are you doing dairy?
Cheese and yogurt.
Cheese and yogurt, yes. Just
Yeah,
no milk.
Yeah. Now you can get there with cheese and that's great. And eggs, cheese, and Greek yogurt. I would always recommend the Greek yogurt because that is definitely higher in protein. And let me give you a quick tip with the yogurts. Yogurts, again, can have lots of these chemicals in them, so you have to be careful. But I like a Greek yogurt called Fage, F-A-G-E, that's the brand. Or I really like the full-fat Greek yogurt at Aldi's. And again, you guys saw with the potato chips, so I don't recommend anything artificially low-fat or fat-free. Fat is very glucose stabilizing. Protein is very glucose stabilizing. So those actually help to stabilize your blood sugar. So I don't recommend anything artificially low fat or fat free. So I like the full fat Greek yogurt. I get the plain. And then what I do is I get about a half a cup of blueberries and I put them in my microwave for just about 20 or 30 seconds. I just want them to get a little bit juicy. And then I stir those blueberries into my yogurt and I add a little bit of stevia to sweeten it just a little bit. And the whole thing turns purple. It's so cool. So you're making your own fruited yogurt and it is really, really, really filling. 1 cup of Greek yogurt is 20 grams of protein. So you'll get there with your protein if you just do that. And then for me, I add, about 1/4 of a cup of nuts, like walnuts or pecans, just to give it a little bit more texture. I know a lot of people like to add granola or something to their yogurt. Well, granola is one of the sugariest things you can eat. So I like to just add some nuts to it. And I'm getting about 400 calories in that breakfast. And I'm getting 20 grams of protein, which is fantastic, which is like just your perfect meal. And then I'm getting the phytochemicals from the blueberries, a little bit of fiber, a little bit of vitamin C. Again, it's a nutrient power-packed breakfast, and that's what we're looking for. So,
Donna, I hate to cut you off, but it's 11:01. We've got such a good question that is so good.
Dang it. Dang it. Okay, let me tell you real quick. You got to add fats. You got to add fat. Fats we have to add. So fats, the natural healthy fats. Butter is fine. Avocado oil, olive oil, bacon fat, any kind of nuts. Those are all great fats to add. Thank you so much, you guys. I'm so sorry we went a little bit over.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I'll stop sharing now and answer any final questions. Just know also that if you guys want, you can do a video appointment with me and we can answer all your questions. We can figure out what's the perfect meal plan for you, your perfect protein amount. And if you have Medicare and you have diabetes, Medicare pays. They pay for 3 visits a year, so for the first year. So if you want to reach out to me, you've got my contact information, and we can do a video appointment and then get all the questions answered. I'm so sorry I went over. You know, I just love this stuff too much.
No, that's fine. You answered all our questions. And I'll make sure in that PDF, you'll get Donna's contact information. That way you can do a one-on-one with her, and she can go over if you have some specifics too.
Yeah.
Well, are there any other final questions before we close out?
I've forgotten now what it is anyway. Oh, you don't? Okay. I thought we had a question, but we don't.
We do have one more.
Okay, go ahead, Leanne.
What about Nutri-Grain bars?
What about Nutri-Grain bars?
Oh my goodness. Read the ingredients and you'll have the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Okay, I guess we can't have those. Okay. Well, Donna, thank you so much for giving us that awesome information. We really appreciate you. We're always so glad when you come on. So thank you, everyone. I will get Donna's presentation to you so that you have it so you can go back review. Don't forget, if you have some questions and you say, hey, I want to talk to Donna one-on-one, Medicare will cover that. So you need to get that done. And if you do have a private insurance, you may even want to reach out to Donna to see how you can get that covered. So, you know, reach out to her. You'll have all that information. I thank all of you for participating with us on today. And thank you so much again, Donna.
Thank you, girls.
Thank you, Donna.
Very fun. Very fun.
All right. Have a great day, everybody, and stay safe.
Okay, thank you.
You as well.
Thanks, Bridget.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.